Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yes, America's Anchorman is away, and this is your EIB dreamer, Mark Stein, trapped in legal limbo, but doing a one-man dream act for the next 3 hours, as you heard yesterday. Rush and the entire EIB team are not legally permitted to broadcast from the golden and soon-to-be waterlogged EIB microphone in Florida, and so they've had to hightail it out of there. Rush will be back on Monday from an undisclosed location. Is he going to do it from Ice Station EIB in far northern New Hampshire? That'd be quite something. It's higher ground, that's for sure. But he will be here. He will be here live on Monday. Mr. Snerdley's not here today. He's in Florida, boarding up his windows. That's because Lena Dunham's sunbathing next door. But Greg is call screening for us today. So Greg is here, and that is 1-800-282-2882. The Hurricanes are coming, as Estelle Getty said, I believe, in a memorable episode of Golden Girls. Take it seriously, but not crazily, if you're in its path, which I see now extends all the way up to Lexington, Kentucky. Irma has already totaled some of my favorite places, some of my favorite islands, actually, in the British West Indies: Anguilla, Barbuda, just clobbered Grand Turk last night. Now, I know no one's going to remember them once it hits the mainland, because it's just a few thousand people compared to displaced millions. But 95% of buildings are gone on Barbuda, which is that's absolutely extraordinary. If whatever size of town or city or village you live in, you imagine if 95% of it is gone overnight. That's what's happened on Barbuda. We'll keep an eye on any hurricane stuff you need to know. But there are other stories in the news. President Trump and Paul Ryan had dinner last night. And it went so well that they've scheduled another for 3 years' time. So that's great news. There's continuing fallout over the deal that that the president has done with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and we will bring you some of that. By the way, this Irma thing, which has been downgraded from Category 5 to Category 4, and people occasionally ask, well, what's above Category 5? What's the definition of a Category 6 hurricane? And the definition, I believe the technical definition of a Category 6 hurricane is when Mitch McConnell's face displays a sense of urgency. That's the official definition of a Category 6 hurricane. Just if you're wondering there, we will talk about that. Also talk about This is a headline in The Hill today. Clinton's score settling frustrates Democrats. Hillary Clinton's third unreadable memoir. If you haven't read her two previous memoirs, her third unread memoir will be launched on Tuesday, and Democrats are getting angry. Excerpts from What Happened, the Clinton campaign memoir, scheduled to be released next week, find her letting loose on the Democratic Party's most popular figures and venting frustration with a process that culminated in her shocking election defeat by Donald Trump. As you know, she blames Biden, she blames Obama, she blames Bernie Sanders, and Democrats are getting sick of it. Even, quote this from the story in The Hill, even some of Clinton's allies have grown weary of her insistence on relitigating the 2016 campaign at a time when the Democratic Party is looking to forge a new identity in the age of Trump. The best thing she could do is disappear, said one former Clinton fundraiser and surrogate who played an active role at the convention. Quote, She's doing harm to all of us because of her own selfishness. Honestly, I wish she'd just shut the blank up and go away. So, this is important. If you're a Democrat and you're listening to this, the DNC has ordered the evacuation of every Democrat from Hillary's book launch. Get out now. Get to higher ground. Run for your lives. Hurricane Hillary is just circling around and around and around, raining on every Democrat in sight. So the DNC has issued an evacuation order from Hillary's impending book launch. You don't want to be around when Hillary's book makes landfall this Tuesday. Now, it is, of course, despite the hurricane and all the rest of it, some things never change. It's the end of the week, and you know what that means.
Live from New York City, it's Open Line Friday!
Yes, indeed. 1-800-282-2882. I only did that to give Mike a bit of exercise. He'd gotten bored with the show already and wandered across the control room. And I thought I'd announce Open Line Friday, so he had to sprint back across the room and fire the sting. And he did it brilliantly. I didn't know he was in that good shape. We'll try and keep him on his toes for the rest of the show. But yes, you know how this works. Monday to Thursday, the show is under the ruthless control of a highly trained broadcast specialist controlling every second of the content and determining strictly what issues can be discussed. But we have no highly trained broadcast specialist today. He is on his way to the undisclosed location. We only have a bit of cheap sub-minimum wage foreign labour for you here today, so there's no point even trying to pretend that there's any kind of highly trained broadcast specialist in sight. So whatever you want to talk about, that's what Open Line Friday means. Give it your best shot. Be like Hurricane Irma and rain all over my parade. 1-800-282-2882. You can talk about anything that is on your mind. And I mentioned just at the top of the top of the show that some of my favourite islands in the British West Indies got clobbered by Hurricane Irma, and I said the Turks and Caicos got it last night. The roof was ripped off the hospital in Grand Turk. And I know I've taken calls on the air over the years, from callers in the Turks and Caicos who listen to this show. I think one caller from Grand Turk and, another time a caller from Providenciales in the Turks and Caicos. So if you are listening in the Turks and Caicos, then it's Open Line Friday. You do not have to be on the sovereign territory of the United States of America. It's such an Open Line Friday that if you're in the sovereign territory of the tyrannical British Crown in the Turks and Caicos, we'll take your call too. 1-800-282-2882 is the number to call. Mark Stein in for Rush, and we're gonna break things down for you. It's a big week politically. Look, it's not difficult to figure out why Trump did what he did with Pelosi and Schumer the other day. The politics of this is obvious, as you can see from looking at the news. Right now, the news is all about devastation, run for your lives. On one side of the country, you've got Houston interstates that look like canals in Venice. They're still full of water as they go through the town, through the underpasses. And on the other side of the country, you've got interstates that are choked with cars fleeing north up the Florida Peninsula. And the Democrats come to a thing saying, we'll give you 3 months on the debt ceiling, we'll take it all off the table, and we'll do the Hurricane Harvey relief. And on the other side of the table, the Republicans are saying, well, we've got an 18-month plan. Every time they have one of these debt ceiling fights, the Republicans get painted as the mustache-twirling villains of the piece. I mean, I hate the debt ceiling stuff anyway, because it's lame-o political dinner theatre of the most worthless kind. And as I said, every time the Republicans get painted as the moustache-twirling villains of the lame-o dinner theatre. And this time round, as I said, you've already got devastation in Texas, and we've got impending devastation in Florida. So you would have the, Republicans threatening to shut down the government story at a time when condo complexes are breaking off the Florida coast and floating into the Atlantic Ocean, and Granny standing on the roof of the condo complex, waving her walker as the Coast Guard helicopter is hovering overhead trying to lower the rope ladder to her, and it would be the Republicans' fault. And that's all that the president did. He said, I can believe Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, and they'll let me down as they have done reliably for the last 8 months, or I can kick this down the road to December with Chuck and Nancy, and go with Chuck and Nancy. And it says something for the incompetence of the Republicans as the majority party in the House and the Senate, that the president decided he couldn't take a flyer on them. And don't forget, this is a guy who, with the exception of the whole Melania's shoes thing, with the exception of Melania's shoes, which in itself indicates how desperate the Republicans were, the media were, to find something to blame Trump for, has actually had a insofar as one can talk about in political terms, has had a spectacularly good hurricane. Everything worked in Harvey. The federal government worked, state government worked, local government worked. They haven't found anything except for Melania's shoes to hang round Trump's neck. And suddenly that's all imperiled because they're going to have a debt ceiling fight. You know, they're going to have Republicans threatening to shut down the government at a time when the condo complexes are floating out to sea. And so he decided he couldn't afford it. But it tells you something about how you cannot rely on the Republican. The Republican majority is meaningless, because in neither house do the so-called wily, slick, sophisticated parliamentary operatives supposedly running the joint have a clue about how to manage their majorities. And that's why Trump decided to kick the whole thing down the road 3 months. It's as simple as that. And so now, hopefully, what will happen over the next few days is that there will be a competent, coherent response to anything that happens in Florida. And Washington will appear to be competent and efficient in doing what it can to ameliorate it, without people talking about shutting down the government. But we will take your views on that, however, whether you come down on the Trump side, on the Ryan McConnell side, on the Pelosi-Schumer side, or whatever other side you want to take on that. Give me a call, 1-800-282-2882, Open Line Friday, as Hurricane Irma prepares to make landfall. Open Line Friday on America's #1 radio show, 1-800-282-2882. I just want to say a little more about what I said about Trump and the Republican Congress. There's basically three parties in Washington right now. There's the Trump Party, there's the Republican Party, and there's the Democrat Party. And it's pretty obvious, as I said, that the Democrats have a base and Trump has a base. It's not clear to me that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell have a base. And voters have been told since the comeback began for the Republicans after the Obama victory in 2008, that you give us the House. Voters gave Republicans the House in 2010. Give us the Senate. Voters gave Republicans the Senate. Okay, but we still can't do anything. You've got to give us the President. They've had everything for 8 months, and it's been pathetic. And Mitch McConnell said when they came back from their recess, which I believe was the longest congressional recess in a decade, right? The longest congressional recess in a decade. And Mitch McConnell's going, oh, well, we got a lot to do. Because we have to find a way to continue to fund the government and not to default on the debt repayment. Right? Now, none of those things are actually doing anything. That's not legislating. That's not doing anything. That's like saying, oh, I've got a lot to do this month. I've got to figure out a way to pay my phone bill and transfer $50 from my savings account to my checking account in order to pay the phone bill. So that Mitch McConnell, when he said, oh, we got a lot on our plate, this month because we got to figure out a way to fund the government and figure out a way not to default on the debt repayment. That isn't actually doing anything. That isn't doing anything. And then he mentioned the president's tax plan, which, to be honest, I can't believe the tax plan will happen. And what's horrible about it is that all the great ambition of the tax plan is instead the idea that there would be a simplified tax code. You'd have a four-page tax form, and at the end of it there'd be a number, and that'll be the check you write to the government. You know, the idea that that this horrible and fundamentally obscene tax code that the United States government has would be dispensed with. All that's been forgotten. The idea of any kind of comprehensive tax reform has been forgotten, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the way to bet is that McConnell still won't manage to do it. And he says, oh, well, the problem here is that maybe, as he said when he was whatever that meeting he was at, whatever it was at the Elks Lodge or wherever it was, where he happened to be saying that, oh, the president doesn't understand how things work, and he perhaps had too ambitious plans about Yes, there are certain things that are particular to Donald Trump, like the wall. All the rest is stuff that you ran on, that you raised money on, and forget the lobbyists and all the other people you're enthralled to, you great swamp-dwelling creep. We're talking about all the ordinary Americans you raise money off by yourself claiming to be in favor of reduced taxes and Obamacare repeal. They're not things that Trump came up with. Trump came up with, whatever you want to call it, the Muslim ban and no more Mexican rapists and various other odd priorities of his. But things like lower taxes and things like Obamacare repeal, you're supposed to be in favor of, and you're supposed to have been planning. And okay, let's say you're going to take the longest vacation that any deadbeat legislator has taken in a decade. Why, when you were working on your fabulous tan, why couldn't you have actually, also been working on something to do with tax reform, so that you don't suddenly give the impression like, one of the advantages of, say, doing a starter job, like doing the night shift at the Quickie Crap or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever it is that the minute you leave, you don't have to think about it. Being Senate Majority Leader is not supposed to be like doing the night shift at Dunkin' Donuts. Yet that actually appears to be how Mitch McConnell looks at it. Yes, America's anchorman has had to hightail it out of EIB Southern Command because it would not be legally permitted to broadcast from Florida today, from his corner of Florida. So Rush is en route to it. He originally planned to do today's show, and then hightail it out of there. But he had to adjust his plans at the behest of the government of Florida and Mother Nature. And Rush will be here on Monday from an undisclosed location. We're all very excited It might, who knows, he might actually decide to do the show from Ice Station EIB in far northern New Hampshire. He'd love it. I'm not sure he's ever set foot that far north in the Granite State, and it would be delightful to see if Rush could actually if Rush would actually enjoy. When Rush is away, you know, there's one thing to do. You don't need to be discombobulated by a sinister foreign guest host. All you need to do is go to rushlimbaugh.com and sign up to be a Rush 24/7 subscriber, and it's like he's there. Nothing. Doesn't matter whether there's a heat wave, doesn't matter whether there's a Mexican earthquake, doesn't matter whether there's a Caribbean hurricane. Rush 24/7 is always there, and you can enjoy Rush in any medium yet known to man. You can hear the radio show on your schedule, whenever you want to listen in the middle of the night, anytime you want to. You can get it in text. You can get it in video on the Ditto Cam, and you can sign up for a year or try the convenient monthly membership for only $6.95, and you still get all the full member benefits if you just sign up for the monthly thing. You get the podcast, you get Rush's stack of stuff, you get the Ditto Cam, you get it all. So just go to rushlimbaugh.com and click the button for Rush 24/7. It's Open Line Friday. That means that whatever you want to talk about, I'm going to talk about. We're not going to attempt to ruthlessly control the content. We're not going to say we're going to be doing North Korean nuclear program this hour and we're going to be doing the debt ceiling. It doesn't work like that. You can go from one thing to another. You can jump like a frog across lily pads all the way across the pond from one flibbity-jibbity subject to another, whatever is on your mind. But I got to say, this is one of my favorite stories today from The Guardian. In Britain, new artificial intelligence can guess whether you're gay or straight from a photograph. Artificial intelligence can accurately guess whether people are gay or straight based on photos of their faces. Actually, just as I said that, a photo of Hillary Rodham Clinton just crossed the screen in front of me. I would have the computer check that out, but it just exploded. Anyway, artificial intelligence can tell, based on a photograph, whether you're gay or straight. This new research suggests that machines, well, for a start, it means gaydar actually is a thing. It's a thing. It's a gaydar machine, you know. So if you're worried about this, just like people have radar detectors in their cars, so they're driving down the highway and they're worried that the police radar trap might be a mile down the road, so you put a radar detector in your car. If you're worried that the government might have a gaydar trap a mile down the road to see if there's any gays coming through, and you're a bit worried about that, you'll soon be able to have a gaydar detector put in your car that will tell you if there's a gaydar trap coming up on I-95. So we'll see how that. But this is accurate. This is research from Stanford University, which found that a computer algorithm can correctly distinguish between gay and straight men 81% of the time. But only 74% for women. So if you're like a lesbian, but you're like flying under the radar, that you've got like a 1 in 4 chance of beating the machine. But if you're a guy who's, not quite out of the closet yet, you're pretty much done for, because this machine is accurate 81% of the time. And they're saying that it's raised questions about the biological origins of sexual orientation, the ethics of facial detection technology, and the potential for this kind of, like this facial detection technology. This is what they use to get into buildings. You know, like if you're in the CIA or MI6 and you got the facial recognition technology. And this makes it difficult. This is going to make it even more difficult in things like Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise, where they have the fake faces, to dodge the facial technician. The facial recognition technology will know that it's not wait a minute, that probably, I won't get it. I don't know whether it will work with Tom Cruise, but anyway, it's not going to be able, it'll say, no, the face looks right, but, we're not picking up the right sexual orientation. So there's going to be even more violations. This is from a Stanford survey published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. And, the interesting thing, stories like this don't seem that important at the time, but they're actually going to be critically important, because what they're saying is that there are machines that will be able to tell what your sexual orientation is. You can imagine this. Let's say, because you know what it's like now. We've done these stories before on this show where someone's got like a kid in grade school and the doctor thinks the kid is interested in gender transition because the kid wakes up one morning and sees his sister's doll, and so suddenly everyone around you, all officialdom, wants you to transition your kid from a boy to a girl, even though he just happens to have idly picked up his sister's Barbie doll for a couple of days. And it's going to be like that now with this fate. Well, we had a look at the class photo, and this is remarkable. We had no idea, but it turns out that little Jimmy's gay. So we're going to give him gay. We're going to shift him over into the gay class now. This is now. I remember seeing John McCain in the New Hampshire primary in 2000 when he said he'd been in the Navy and he was boasting about his gaydar. He said because he'd been in the Navy, his gaydar was totally reliable. And in fact, this machine is more accurate. It says this machine tells your sexuality more accurately than human gaydar. We don't know whether that's more accurate than John McCain's gaydar. It would be nice to have a test where we'll have this machine from Stanford University and then John McCain, and selected persons of various orientations will go passing by, and we'll see whether John McCain can beat the gaydar machine. But this is, and again, on this show, must be about 7 or 8 years ago, there was some story about the United Arab Emirates, I believe it was, at the airport. They said the United Arab Emirates had come up with a gaydar machine that would test, because they're not big on that in the United Arab Emirates. If you're saying, I'm flying to the Emirates for the weekend, can you tell me what the best gay club in town is? Don't say that to the guy at the airport, because it's a bit of a giveaway, and they're not keen on it down there. Don't worry, I forget what it is. It's like they're not I don't believe they burn you alive in the United Arab. I think they just toss you off a tall building. So you don't have to worry about the whole burning alive thing. But anyway, they had a machine. The United Arab Emirates, the department, the Department of Infidel Activities had invented a machine that supposedly detects your sexuality. And we laughed and we scoffed. And it turns out that at the University of Stanford now, computers can tell from a photograph. So people will be able to look at your driver's license and tell whether you are a bit light on your loafers. That's going to be great. And you think about how this is, I mean, there are uses to this. I would love it, for example, if we were to take, say, a big shot Ayatollah in Iran, or like this Caliph al-Baghdadi, the head of the ISIS thing, and get the Stanford University to announce that he can deny it, but like the machine doesn't lie. The machine doesn't lie. So it will be interesting to see where this goes. But that is the story with perhaps the biggest implications for the extent of government power in the years ahead. Mark Stein for Rush on Open Line Friday. We'll take your calls straight ahead. Hurricane Irma is a-coming, but that does not impact Open Line Friday on America's #1 radio show. Let us go to Tim in South Dakota. Tim, you're live on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Great to have you with us.
Hello, Mark. I am driving across the plains here in my adopted home state. I am a minister in the Episcopal Church, which is, of course, the American franchise of the Anglican burger world.
That's true.
And we are an institution that was rolled up by the liberals some time ago.
Oh, yes.
Nothing we could do stood in their path. Nothing, scripture, tradition, and reason, to quote our supposed bulwarks, or bollards. Those were our bollards.
Right.
And they collapsed in the face of the appeals to emotion. We were told we had to have gay clergy and gay wedding blessings, because if we didn't, we were causing hordes of gay teenagers to commit suicide.
Right.
We were told the same about the ordination of women. We were crushing the souls of little girls, on and on and on and on. And where I'm drawing this line is to your comments about Trump and the debt ceiling, and Grandma sitting on the floating condo, shaking her walker at the Coast Guard helicopter. Are there no hard targets left? I mean, really, is this thing all over? Are there no ways we can make conservative stands that can't be simply withered away by an appeal to somebody being hurt by it, somebody's feelings being hurt, somebody's something being hurt? It just seems like nothing stands in the way.
Well, there are two things. They're slightly two different things in the political sphere, because to a certain extent, one expects politicians to be finger-in-the-windy, unprincipled, jelly-spined creeps, because they have to stand for election every couple of years. It's slightly more disturbing, Tim, when it is done by clergy who are supposed to be speaking to the eternal verities. And what I notice, no disrespect to your own church, which is the church. I'm a member of the Anglican Church of Canada. It's the church that I was confirmed in and everything. But it's exactly the same there, and it's exactly the same over in Mother England, and it's the same at almost all their branches, except I think at the Anglican Church of Nigeria, which has more members in its pews every Sunday than the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom combined. Which is my point, Tim, that selling out doesn't actually, selling out to the modish fancies of the day, and you're about to be told, you don't have enough, you're not transgender friendly enough, you don't have enough transgendered archbishops, so you better get hep to that. The selling out to whatever modish fancy comes along this week doesn't actually work for the church, because the church is a faith that simply approves every one of your appetites is not a faith anyone actually needs, Tim. Or am I wrong about that?
No, that's absolutely the case. But it does have trust funds and property to liquidate for the club members who do like it.
Right. No, and I actually think that's not an issue in the United States, but I think, for example, what's happening in Britain and Europe and other parts of the Western world, where the church, as you say, the church has a lot of real estate, it has a lot of property, it's shy on members. And what you see in Britain and Europe, which is one of the most sad features of Western life in the early 21st century, is churches being sold off and converted into mosques. And if you remember that Ariana Grande concert bombing in Manchester a couple of months ago, that guy, the guy who did that, actually attends a mosque that used to be a church. And I reiterate that. And actually, Islam is, whatever one feels about Islam, it's a stern faith. I mean, the things we mock about your church, Tim, and the Episcopal Church deserves a lot of mockery. When it goes for, I mean, in New Hampshire, we had a gay bishop, and I think he was the first out gay bishop anywhere in the Anglican Communion. So yay for New Hampshire and yay for the gay. It wasn't enough that he's just like you roll your eyes and think, oh, we got to get with the program. Someone's got to have the gay bishop, so it might as well be us. He said that he described he described gay sex with his partner in more detail than I think the average little old lady in the pews was in the mood for, and described it as sacramental. That's how far the gay bishop of New Hampshire went. And say what you like about Islam, but I can't think of a single imam. I don't see any imam who says, oh, where Friday prayers at the mosque, there was a real, we're really getting a lot of empty seats in the mosque this Friday. I think we need to have more gay imam. I haven't been to the seminary in Qom in Iran, where all the big shot ayatollahs go, but they're not saying, what we need are more gay ayatollahs. We need an out gay ayatollah. That's really what Islam needs. Islam is thriving and prospering because it doesn't get with the beat, Tim.
That's right. That's right. And the churches around the world that don't tend to do better.
Yeah. Well, I hope you can do something for the Episcopal Church, Tim. Thank you for your call, and that's also, as I said, for my quarter of the Anglican Communion too. Church of England, Anglican Church of Canada, Episcopal Church. There's more people in the pews in the Anglican Church of Nigeria every Sunday morning. There's no market for what the Episcopal Church is doing. Mark Stein for Rush. We will take lots more of your calls straight ahead. There's the most incredibly expressive signer doing the sign language for the deaf behind the governor of Florida right now at the press conference. This is the most incredibly expressive signer I have seen since the Nelson Mandela funeral. She is doing this is like Marlon Brando. It's like fantastic. This is the great sign stuff. Very, very expressive sign acting from this lady doing the sign. Oh, she's just stuck her head between her legs and kissed her butt goodbye. I think that's the upshot of that. That's the head for the hills down in Florida. They're bracing for a direct hit, and we are here tracking Hurricane Irma and all the rest. Open Line Friday. Mark Stein in for Rush. Lots more still to come. Yes, America's Anchorman is away, and this is your EIB dreamer living in limbo, Rush Limbo, for the rest of the day. It's basically like a one-man dream act for the next 2 hours, 'cause I'm a dreamer, aren't we all? It's lovely to be it's beautiful to be a dreamer. Don't you just like the way we don't talk about public policy in hard-headed terms anymore, 'cause that's just so mean-spirited. We just give it a nice name like the Dream Act, and we talk about dreamers. Because some people dream of just like taking a flat-bottom skiff across the Rio Grande and breaking into somebody else's country, and that's just like a heartwarming, fluffy dream, isn't it? Why don't we call it the Fluffy Bunny Act? That'll be so. It's so much nice. I don't like the way when people make laws. In the old days, they used to just give them boring names, like, the airport parking lot expansion bill. I mean, it just sounds so boring, doesn't it? Why don't we just give them all nice, fluffy bunny names like the Dream Act? Because that's the way mature republics that have been governing themselves for 2.25 centuries demonstrate their maturity, by having mature grown-up names for their laws, like the Dream Act. I love that. The Dream Act. We're all dreamers. Well, no, you're not a dreamer, because you're a lawful citizen of this country, so you're big nothing. But like having a nice dream, like just being in some dump of a country that's totally dysfunctional, and you think to yourself, oh, I'd like to bust into somebody else's country and live there under a fake social security. Oh, you're a dreamer. That's so nice, isn't it? Oh, I love love that. Let's have sentimental names. But like this debt ceiling, doesn't that sound like mean? It sounds like you're the kind of person who thinks, people should live within their means and not run up more than the odd $20 trillion of debt. And wouldn't it be nice if we just called that the fluffy unicorn ceiling instead of the debt ceiling? Because let's face it, if you're in Washington, you look up at the ceiling, there's fluffy unicorns dancing all over the ceiling in Congress, aren't there? Why don't we just all do it? Anyway, 1-800... sorry, I forgot. What was I saying? 1-800-282-2882. You know what it is. No, you don't. Oh, here it comes. Here's the jingle.
Live from New York City, it's Open Line Friday.
Tough. You're fired. You'll never work in this town again. You were too late. You were 15 seconds late. I don't need. It's the hurricanes are coming. We can't have that kind of. That's like when you need to evacuate and the guy's not there. That's too late. To hell with that guy. 1-800. He's finished. He'll never work in this town again. 1-800-282. I've got no influence in this. I'll tell you something. He will never work in northern New Hampshire again. Because I take these things personally. That's huge trouble. 1-800-282-2882. His maple syrup's going to get lost in the mail. You know who I like who's like that? Trump and Steve Bannon. This interview with Steve Bannon that's going out on 60 Minutes this Sunday. Former White House chief strategist Stephen Bannon says New Jersey Governor Chris Christie wasn't considered for a cabinet position in President Trump's administration because he failed to offer support after the release of the infamous 2005 Access Hollywood tape. Quote, Christie, because of Billy Bush weekend, was not looked at for a cabinet position, Bannon said in an interview on CBS's 60 Minutes. Host Charlie Rose responded, he wasn't there for you on Billy Bush weekend, therefore he doesn't get a cabinet position. Bannon continued, I told him the plane leaves at 11 o'clock in the morning. If you make the plane, you make the team. He didn't make the plane. Boomf. Chris Christie dead out of it. Chris Christie was the first of the rival candidates to go over to the Trump team. He stood there looking like the guy in the hostage video, in the Taliban hostage video, standing behind Trump with that weird fixed expression, the glassy eyes. He stood there for whatever it was, 90 minutes at something at Mar-a-Lago. He did all that long before, when Ted Cruz and Trump were still going at it, and Trump was accusing Ted Cruz's father of being on the grassy knoll with Lee Harvey Oswald. Christie was the first guy to go over to Team Trump. But he wasn't there on Billy Bush weekend, and that's why he's not Attorney General today. So Trump and Bannon are unforgiving like that. If you want to talk about the other interesting thing, going back to what we were talking about the Episcopal Church, Bannon makes a rather interesting point in that interview about the Catholic Church being so much in favor of illegal immigration. Because they're all about, the dreamers, we love the dreamers, everybody's, I'm a dreamer, you're a dreamer, everyone's a dreamer. They're all like that. And Bannon argues that's because they've got problems of their own. They want to import illegal immigrants to fill up the pews of the Catholic Church. And he is correct to the extent that the social justice wing of the Catholic Church is extremely powerful. Essentially, Pope Francis is a social justice pontiff. And Bannon's point about the Church being the Catholic Church being one of the main institutional forces in favor of illegal immigration. I mean, Pope Francis is all big for open borders. Pope Francis, when he had that big shot president of Iran come to visit, they have to cover up the nude statuary in Rome now, in the heart of Christendom, so that it doesn't offend the big shot visitors from Iran. Yet Pope Francis is still all hot for Islamizing Europe, and the Catholic Church in America is still all hot for illegal immigration there. We will talk about that. As I said, it's Open Line Friday. That means you can talk about anything you want to talk about. Before I forget, I want to mention that people sometimes want to know what do you do when they say, what do you do, Stein, when you're not guest hosting for Rush? And the truth is, basically, I'm passed out in a pool of my own vomit in a rusting boxcar around the back of the freight yards. You know, I don't have a lot to do the other 29 days of the month. But oddly enough, I do next month, October the 2nd, I'm going to be in Minneapolis for the Center of the American Experiment. And they're a terrific group that organizes a lot of good events and does a lot of good things in the state of Minnesota. And I will be at the Guthrie Theater, which is a beautiful building in Minneapolis, on Monday, October 2nd. And if you would like to come along to see that, that's a rare thing. Normally, I'm like here one day a month. I'm passed out in my own vomit in a rusting boxcar around the back of the freight yard the other 29 days of the month. But this is a rare day when I'm actually doing something else too. So I'll be working 2 days in October. It's almost like steady work. And I'll be at the Guthrie Theater Monday, October the 2nd. You can find out more about that if you go to americanexperiment.org. We are tracking Hurricane Irma. There are now mass evacuations underway in Florida. The interstates are all jammed with traffic heading one way north. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, pretty tough breaks they've been getting on some of these little islands in the Caribbean, in the British West Indies. Barbuda, 95% of structures in Barbuda have been destroyed. They have to be rebuilt totally. Grand Turk, Coburn Town, which is one of my favorite capital cities. I think it's got about 1,600 people, Coburn Town, in capital city of the Turks and Caicos. And I love that. I love that place. It's got a beautiful little pocket legislature and a pocket Supreme Court, and I think there's a picture of Her Majesty's prison, which is now a tourist attraction, but it was a prison, as the name suggests, until the 1990s. And a little picture of me last time I was there, taken outside that. A beautiful place. Well, London suspended the government of the Turks and Caicos because it was corrupt and dysfunctional. So it had direct rule from London. They fired the Prime Minister and the government because they were corrupt and dysfunctional. I didn't even know that was a thing with government. Hey, did you know that? Like, you can be in government and be fired for being corrupt and dysfunctional. It never occurred to me. Do you think anyone knows that in Washington? It was like extraordinary. I didn't really realize that was a thing. But the entire government was fired for being corrupt and dysfunctional in the Turks and Caicos. And Grand Turk got clobbered last night. Anguilla also got clobbered. That's a little island. Used to be part of the same colonial administration as St. Kitts and Nevis. And St. Kitts and Nevis became independent. Anguilla didn't want to be with them. And in fact, they declared a Republic of Anguilla. Think about 1968, 1969. And they rose up in revolt, just like you guys did, against the British Crown. And their revolution was put down. London dispatched an invasion force to take back the island from the Republic of Anguilla of 40 British policemen, 40 London policemen. You couldn't put down a Black Lives Matter one-man protest outside a convenience store with 40 policemen now. 40 London policemen put down the revolt of the Republic of Anguilla and restored it to the British Crown. That's how likeable the Anguillans are. They had it was like Revolution Light, not like you guys. You guys were serious about it. 40 coppers, 40 British bobbies wouldn't do it. Yeah, that's right. What's going on here then? Let's be having you. Now then, come along with me. And that was it. That was it for the Republic of Anguilla. Bomb, boom, gone history. And that was the biggest disruption in the life of Anguilla until Hurricane Irma showed up a couple of nights ago. So spare a thought for those islands. There's just a few thousand people at each of those sleepy little colonial outposts, but they have been clobbered. And I have a huge amount of affection for some of those islands. And I have a huge amount, even when it comes to revolutionary, I think the kind of revolutionary insurrectionist you can put down with 40 London coppers, there's something to be said. That's my kind of revolutionary, you know. That's a very affable and amiable revolutionary. Mark Stein in for Rush. We will take your calls straight ahead. Mark Stein in for Rush on the EIB network. I think they've got tomorrow's guest host is lurking in the control room, right at the back of the room there. Let's go to Cheryl. Cheryl, you're live on America's #1 radio show. Great to have you with us.
Hi, Mark. So good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. What's on your mind today?
Well, it's this whole thing about Hillary.
Ah, yes.
She has been blaming everybody but me.
Right.
I voted for Trump. She should name me too.
So you want to be well, look, I have it. We've had the leaked excerpts from all the Hillary books so far, blaming all these people, and I was stunned at the bit they released today, because they're rolling these out gradually to maintain excitement for Hillary's book launch on Tuesday, and they've got something here from page 783 of the book. I was still confident, writes Hillary, that I could overcome James Comey, Vladimir Putin, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, the Macedonian content farmers, and the other people in the tank for Trump, until I heard Cheryl was planning on voting for Trump. I felt as personally betrayed as I did when Bill Clinton came home bored on a long holiday weekend and announced he wasn't having an affair that day. It's right there on page 738 of the book, Cheryl. You're blamed. Don't worry about it. But before you go, Cheryl, have you paid I think it's 2,400 US or 3,000 Canadian. I believe that's what they're charging in Toronto for a personal meet and greet with Hillary at these book signings. Are you going to pay for that at when she comes to your local Barnes and Noble? Are you going to pay $2,400 for a personal meet and greet?
No, I'm not. I'm kind of hoping she'll just meet and greet me since she just named me.
Well, that's the next stage, is that for just $10,000, if you pay $10,000, Hillary will come and stand beside you with a big, pointing her finger at you and say, "I blame you." And that's just for a mere $10,000. You can be personally blamed for throwing the election to Trump, Cheryl. So that's good news. So you consider that. Thanks for your call. Thanks for your call, Cheryl. Do you know something? Did you detect a slight Macedonian accent, from Cheryl? I thought I did. I think she might be one of those Macedonian content farmers that Hillary likes to blame, because the truth of the matter is that it wasn't Putin who was throwing the election to Trump. It was the Macedonians. Because what you have to ask, if you're Hillary, what you have to ask is, if Putin is behind Trump, who's behind Putin? Behind Putin, it's the Macedonians, and behind the Macedonians, it's Cheryl in Colorado Springs. That's the thing. You got to look deep, deep, deep into the conspiracy theory. Now, I mentioned earlier that the big story in the Hill, that the big shot Democrats are getting sick of this. They're trying to move on. And who invented the concept of moving on politically? Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton. In the 90s, they said, "Oh, Monica is old news. We need to move on." Hillary is now the last person in the world who cannot move on from the 2016 campaign. She wants to relive the 2016 campaign forever. And the big shot Democrats are getting totally sick of it. And they're saying, and as I said earlier, the DNC has issued an evacuation order to all Democrats that they are immediately to evacuate the Hillary book launch on Tuesday. Flee for your lives. Don't wait for the Hillary book launch to make landfall. Flee now. Run now, because otherwise you're going to be trapped. You could be trapped in a room with Hurricane Hillary just circling, raining over everybody in the room. Oh, look, there's Joe Biden over there, and I think I'll go and rain on Joe Biden for a bit. Oh, look, I think I'll circle over there. I'll rain over, I'll just like rain over here. I'll come over here and rain on Obama. Look, I'll rain on... Bernie Sanders said something very sensible this morning. He said, what ideas? She's accused him of stealing her ideas. What idea has Hillary ever had? Bernie has rightly made the point that whatever you feel about Bernie Sanders, he's the guy with the ideas. They're all crazy ideas, but they're his ideas. And the fact is that that's what excited people. That's what enthused people. Hillary was offering nothing else other than her own inevitability. And she's bitter about it. Bernie, I think, is quite likely to run again. I mean, I kind of live up in his neck of the woods, and the word round there from people close to him is that Bernie is giving serious thought to running again, and he'll be a mere 112, I believe, at the start of the next primary season, and he's seriously thinking about running again. And it doesn't matter that he's 112, because he's got something. He's got something larger than himself. Hillary offered nothing other than her own invincible sense of her indispensability, and nobody else bought it. And you don't need to buy a book to figure that out, and no matter how many people she blames, that will always be the reason why she lost. Yes, Rush is out today. There's a rather poisonous story in The Hill, and Rush can defend himself on this, and he defended himself perfectly well on it yesterday, talking about this ridiculous show on Headline News, where they had a whole panel talking about how outrageous it was he said what he said, and in fact there was only one person on the panel who'd actually bothered to check and listen to what he said. But there's a follow-up story in The Hill, basically, that today, the big newspaper for Congress, that says after mocking Hurricane Irma as a liberal plot, which is not what he said, Rush has now had to flee. Rush has not fled. There's a mandatory evacuation order. It would actually be illegal for him to do the show today where he would normally do the show. He doesn't have any choice in the matter. So he isn't fleeing. Rush isn't the kind of guy who does flee, but the rubbish that is spoken, it's like Chinese whispers. Rush says something, some twit from Media Matters writes it, somebody from CNN comments on it, somebody from Al Roker asks Al Roker what they think of what the CNN guy commented about what the Media Matters guy interpreted what Rush said. And before you know it, you get to this stupid story in The Hill where after mocking Hurricane Irma as a liberal plot, poor old Rush is forced to flee for his life. He's not fleeing for his life. He and the EIB team down there simply are not legally permitted to stay there and do the show. So they got to find somewhere else to do it, and they have found somewhere else to do it, and that's where he's going to be doing it from on Monday. So enough of this nonsense. If you want to get away from this, if you want to break from the nonsense, one way to do it is to go to rushlimbaugh.com and take out a subscription to the Limbaugh letter. It's America's most popular political newsletter. It comes out every month, and if you subscribe now, you'll be in time for the September newsletter, which features Rush interviewing Dinesh D'Souza. You may remember the last time I was here, Dinesh was on the show, and I spoke to Dinesh D'Souza about this new book of his, The Big Lie, exposing the Nazi roots of the American left. And it was making a lot of big waves. And people say, oh, I was very interested to hear what Dinesh D'Souza said, Stein, but you did an absolutely terrible interview. You can't really interview for your life. You're not very good at it. You should find some alternative work, like maybe being a milkman or a buggy whip manufacturer. And you've got a point. So the way to discover how a really good, effective interview with Dinesh D'Souza goes is to subscribe to the Limbaugh letter, because the master is doing it right there. Rush is interviewing Dinesh D'Souza. He'll be talking about this book, The Big Lie, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left, and it's particularly timely at a time when we're all going bonkers about statuary, because all the statues of these so-called hate figures are in fact statues of Democrats. So Dinesh D'Souza and his book, The Big Lie, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left. Rush is talking about that in the Limbaugh letter. If you subscribe now, for your annual subscription, you will actually get 13 issues. That is right. It's like a Bernie Sanders year. We give you more months. 13 months in a year's subscription to the Limbaugh letter. That's great. Bernie, for the Bernie newsletter, I think it's 15 months a year. If under Bernie's welfare plan, you'll actually get 15 monthly welfare checks a year, because he's redesigning the year, so you get more welfare checks. But in the Limbaugh letter, you get 13 issues for your 1 year subscription. You'll also get Rush's bonus report, 15 ways to beat liberal lies. All you got to do to sign up is go to rushlimbaugh.com and sign up to become a Rush 24/7 subscriber. Let us go to John in Topeka, Kansas. John, you're live on America's #1 radio show. What's on your mind today?
Oh, well, I had a question about the right to vote for these illegal immigrants. Didn't they have the right to vote where they were citizens of?
That's right. That's right. When we talk about a pathway to this phrase, pathway to citizenship, which again is like one of these sort of fatuous, sentimentalized phrases. They use a pathway to citizenship as if it's some rose-strewn bower, and right at the end of it, there's lurking an American passport for them. Yeah, they have a pathway to citizenship. It leads to the airport and a one-way ticket out to the country they came from. And as you say, they can vote in their own country, John.
Because they could use that right to vote to make their country better.
That's right.
And the fact is that I believe that they should give legalization to the DACA kids, like a red card, not a green card, but something similar. But in 25 years, a possibility of becoming an American citizen. But,
right. Have we lost John? Is he gone away?
Oh, no. I got a reverb here.
Okay. Yeah, no, you make the critical point, John. And actually, I just want to explore that a minute, John, because I think it's essential to how we look at this thing. Why is immigration a good thing? Why is mass immigration a good thing? In the old days, it used to be, in the 19th century, if you came in through Ellis Island in the late 19th century because you were subject to the Tsar, it was because if you were a peasant in 12th century Poland, then your great-great-great whatever was going to be a peasant in 14th century Poland, and your great-great-great-great-great whatever was going to be a peasant in 16th century Poland, and eventually you get sick of all that down the generations, and you decide, I'll get on a boat to Ellis Island and take a flyer on something new. And it was understood even then in those terms that the point about immigration was you were supposed to have whatever your incentives were, you were supposed to have something to offer the state in which you were arriving. In other words, the point about immigration is that the immigrant is supposed to benefit the people who are already there. That's the purpose of immigration. It's quite simple as that. A nation has borders, and the people within the borders are the people of that nation. And if you're not one of those people within the borders, you're welcomed in as a guest, and you have to demonstrate that you are of some benefit to the people who are already there. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. There's actually nothing kind and generous in denuding developing countries around the world of the people who can't stick it there any longer and want to get the hell out of there. I mean, what does that do for the countries that are left behind? For example, one of the reasons why Mexico is so rotten and corrupt is because it exports people, and the people who don't want to live under rotten, corrupt regimes get out and go somewhere else. The point, and this again, to go back to what we were talking about when everyone went bananas a few weeks ago, they went crazy because Stephen Miller was mocking the stupid poem that's stapled on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Because the short version of that poem by Emma Lazarus, oddly enough, it's not chiseled into the statue. The French, when they built the statue, didn't put the stupid poem on it. The French sent the Americans a great Statue of Liberty, and then the Americans stapled a stupid poem to the bottom of it and made it a statue of immigration. And the point of that statue, that lady standing there with her torch aloft, is meant to be a beacon of liberty to the world. The idea of the Statue of Liberty is not a statue about importing people. It's a statue about exporting the big idea of liberty. And so the idea that somehow the solution to the world's woes is to regard all 7 billion people on the planet as incipient potential American citizens in waiting is a completely deformed way of looking at what that statue represents. That statue is actually making the point. John in Topeka actually is making the point here that it would be a lot better if people stayed in their own... If you like America, if you like individual liberty, if you like civilized functioning society, if you like small government, if you like freedom of speech, if you like freedom of association, if you like freedom of movement, if you like freedom of religion, if you like all these things... the best thing is not to come to America, but to demand your right to it in your home country. And John is absolutely right about this. Now, we have this sentimentalized nonsense about immigration here, including this dreamers rubbish. But the bottom line, as Freedom House, which tracks these things in a survey every year, the bottom line, as Freedom House reports in its latest rankings, is that freedom is in retreat around the world. And there's not going to be more freedom in the world if we just say to people, give up on freedom wherever you are in Latin America, wherever you are in Africa, wherever you are in Asia. Give up on freedom. There's no point to it there. What you got to do is come here and be a dreamer. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Live up to the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty says, we're not about importing people. We're about exporting the central idea, the biggest idea of all, which is human liberty. And rather than, I mentioned I was going to be in Minnesota on October the 2nd, which is full of Somalis. All these Somali refugees, they call it Little Mogadishu, whatever part of Minneapolis that is. There's no point to turning Minneapolis into Somalia. There's a lot to be said for turning Somalia into Minnesota. And you don't do that by telling the world to all come, and this country over here operates effectively, and here's 150 countries over there that are totally dysfunctional. So let's ask all the 150 countries to send us all their people, and then we'll have one overcrowded, dysfunctional country over here and 150 empty, dysfunctional countries over there. No. The Statue of Liberty is not about importing people, it's about exporting liberty. And John in Topeka is right. If you want to vote, go back to your own country and vote to make it better. Mark Stein for Rush. Lots more still to come. Mark Stein in for Rush as Hurricane Irma prepares to make landfall. The BBC is carrying a weird story about some Americans who are planning to shoot at Irma or use flamethrowers and lasers to stop the hurricane. I don't know about it. The BBC always has a whole category of stories. You'll never guess what these crazy Americans are up to now. But this is about some guy called Ryan Edwards who is planning to shoot at Hurricane Irma. Actually, I believe, I'm not a ballistics expert to this degree, but that actually if you shoot into the eye of a hurricane, the hurricane swallows up the bullet, and then it comes down and kills some guy in Anguilla or Barbuda. So it's probably quite safe to do. If you want to shoot at Hurricane Irma, do have a go. But it's about to make landfall. They're giving a briefing by the Homeland Security Advisor on it at the White House just now. Take it seriously, but take it calmly. Rush is engaged in relocating to a new broadcast facility from where he will be doing the show live on Monday, and that's good news. He will be here on Monday. He wanted to be here today, and then was planning to fly out after the show, but he had to adjust his plans at the behest of the authorities. Where are things going in the relationship between Trump and Congress? Is this deal with Pelosi and Schumer anything real, or is it just to get him? I seriously believe, given the fact that these are people who are planning to impeach him, given the fact that Nancy Pelosi is now boasting that she controls his Twitter feed, which is outrageous, because it's one thing for the Democrats to secretly control Congress. It's an entirely different thing and far more consequential if the Democrats are now controlling Trump's Twitter feed. But the fact is that the last 8 months have been absolutely dismal for the Republican Congress, and people are entitled to be annoyed at it. Trump is a doer. Now, there's things that are not just the fault, they're not the fault particularly of Ryan and McConnell, but they're the fault of a system that has become perverted and dysfunctional, and the debt ceiling actually embodies that. It's a structural fault in what has happened to the way Congress is run. And because they didn't take him seriously and in effect despised him and had contempt for him, McConnell and Ryan, that I think Trump figured he certainly wasn't prepared to mortgage the public attitude to his handling of hurricanes to Ryan and McConnell's ability to manage a debt ceiling negotiation as hurricanes are afflicting Texas and Florida. That's why he did what he did. But it's on them. They don't particularly support his agenda, and they took the view, I think, on January the 20th. By the way, just to go back to that thing where Christie got dumped from the cabinet because he wasn't on the plane because he didn't stand by Trump sufficiently after the Billy Bush tape was leaked. Ryan didn't stand by Trump. Ryan abandoned Trump. Ryan was indifferent to Trump. Ryan was giving conference calls, as we heard from Louis Gohmert, telling congressmen the key thing is to make sure you get elected. The argument to make sure you get re-elected is to say you're going to be there as a brake on Hillary. Fat chance, right? These guys can't be a brake on anything except a Republican president. So Trump is right about that. But the dysfunction, this is a shot across their bows, saying you've either been incompetent or hostile to the president's agenda. You sink or swim with Trump. That's it. That's the choice. You sink with Trump or you swim with Trump. But that's it. Mark Stein for Rush. More to come. Mark Stein in for Rush. They've just temporarily suspended the Jones Act, which I think is something to do with allowing foreign vessels to bring oil and such like to American ports. So they've temporarily... It's interesting when they suspend laws just for the hurricane. You sometimes wonder if they can suspend them for that. Wouldn't it be fun to suspend some of these laws for kind of slightly longer than the hurricane? Just a thought. Mark Stein for Rush. More straight ahead.
The views expressed by the host in this program documented to be almost always right. 99.8% of the time there's a reason for that. It's because we engage in a relentless and unstoppable pursuit of the truth, and we find it. And then we proclaim it. And that happens to drive people crazy. Happy to have you, folks. 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Have we made a determination on tomorrow yet? Is that, or are we still... Okay, I may as well go and announce this. I'm not going to get into details because of the security nature of things, but it turns out that we will not be able to do the program here tomorrow. That will be in the hands of Mark Stein tomorrow. We'll be on the air next week, folks, from Parts Unknown. So we'll be back on Monday. It's just that tomorrow is going to be problematic. Tomorrow it would be, I think, legally impossible for us to originate the program out of here. So, I had to cancel a bunch of stuff. I was going to go to a private movie screening this afternoon, and I had a bunch of stuff to do tonight, and now that's all blown to smithereens. But I had a feeling this was going to happen. Well, Vince Flynn's new movie, American Assassin, they've made him... It starts on September 15th. I can already tell you it's dynamite. American Assassin is just fabulous. And they were going to have a private screening for me. There's the big premiere in Minneapolis where Vince lived tomorrow that I can't make. So I was going to have the private one. I was going to zip to it right after the program today, but now that's blown to smithereens. And so I'm going to reschedule that for Parts Unknown, where I'm headed. But, Vince passed away way, way, way too soon. And it was just beloved by everybody who knew him. His wife and kids are some of the finest people. His wife's name is Lisa. She's still so proud. See her frequently, not as often as we would like, but everybody here is just proud as they can be that one of Vince's numerous thriller novels has been turned into a movie, and it premieres on September the 15th. So, American Assassin is it. Now, let's see. The stuff we've been talking about, the Republicans and the Democrats and Trump doing the deal with Chuck and Nancy. I think it's important to retell. We just had a call from an original Trumpist. Been to 4 rallies in Phoenix. He's been on board since day one. And he says this deal that Trump did with the Democrats doesn't faze him at all. Doesn't bother him at all. He says in his mind, Trump does not have a partnership with the Republicans, and so it's silly to hold out hope for that. The raising of the debt limit didn't bother this guy at all. I asked him, what would bother you? What would cause you to begin to question your support for the Trumpster? And he said, immigration and the wall. And I said, you got to be a little nervous over what the Trumpster's saying about the DACA kids. And he admitted that he is. And this whole scenario is fraught with peril for Trump. And he's telling him, he said, if you're a DACA kid, you got nothing to worry about. For 6 months, you got nothing to worry about. The problem with this 6 months is, we talked about this yesterday. I understand the theory. The theory is that what Obama did is unconstitutional, and it is. And Obama said it was temporary, but it wasn't. The Democrats know what they're doing in this. They never intended this to be temporary. Obama intended DACA to be the first step in amnestizing all of the illegals. And the Democrats' theory, Obama's theory, was the Republicans would never really undo it. Just like they would never really repeal Obamacare. Obama's thinking on this was, it's an entitlement. Obamacare is a bunch of free stuff for people. The Republicans aren't going to take it away from them. And when it comes to DACA, Obama's theory was the Republicans, they may huff and puff, but at the end of the day, they are not going to kick a bunch of kids out of the country. That was Obama rolling the dice. So Trump had promised all during the campaign that one of the first things he was going to do was roll back Obama's deferred action for childhood arrivals because it was unconstitutional, and Obama knew it was. You know, we played these sound bites over and over of Obama telling supporters that he wasn't king. We are a land of laws, he said, and I just can't go out there and universally grant amnesty to people. I just can't do it. We have a constitution. And he did it anyway, starting with these kids, these unaccompanied minors that came in from Central America. So Trump simply said, I'm ending this, but I was going to be a 6-month period of time before my order is implemented. So Obama's DACA essentially stands for 6 months. Now, here is what I theorized is likely to happen. You realize the Republicans and Democrats both want comprehensive immigration reform, i.e. amnesty. I think it's entirely possible that what's going to happen is that the theory is, I should tell you this first, the conventional wisdom is that Congress can't act fast enough. There's already too much on their agenda, too much on the calendar in the next 6 months, such whatever it is, that they can't squeeze this in. There just isn't time. Congress doesn't move that fast. They can't move that fast. This is one of the things Trump wants to change, by the way. What do you mean you can't move that fast? You know, nobody in business thinks that way. You got a project, you go do it. What do you mean you can't move this fast? 6 months? You can't deal with this in 6 months? It's stupid. It's silly. But it is a convenient congressional excuse, and particularly in the Senate. Well, you know, we here in the Senate, primary purpose we serve is to slow things down. We lower the temperature of all these things so that action isn't taken in the heat of passion, the heat of emotional moments. We dial it back so that it's purely scholarship here that determines what we do. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised, however, since conventional wisdom is they can't act 6 months. What if the Republicans and Democrats get together and they come up with a piece of legislation? Because what Trump's basically said is, it's up to you. What Obama did is unconstitutional. You have to write a law dealing with these people. And if you put together a right law, I'll sign it without any guidance. He didn't give any guidance. So what happens if the Republicans and Democrats come up with a full-fledged piece of legislation that grants amnesty exactly as Obama's executive order did? And then they send that back up to Trump to sign. What does he do? They can deal from below the deck on this if they want. Do you realize the trouble they can cause for Trump on this? You're not seeing this? Okay, Trump delays the pulling of Obama's DACA order for 6 months. In that time, Congress is supposed to come up with a piece of legislation to fix it. What if Chuck and Nancy and Mitch and Paul get together and come up with a piece of legislation that grants amnesty to the exact same bunch of people, the kids? That, in other words, is legislation that does exactly what Obama's executive order does and then sends that up to Trump. Does Trump sign it? You think he does? You think Trump signs an amnesty bill for the kids? This guy that just called said that's it. he's off the Trump train if Trump signs amnesty for anybody. Now, you're saying, what if Trump negotiates and you're going to do this, then you better put money for the wall in there. Okay? What if they don't? What leverage does anybody have to put the wall in there? Well, Trump's, I'll veto it. Well, then you're going to be responsible for kids being kicked back home. That's how they're looking at it. I guarantee you. At least the kids being kicked out of the country and forced to go back to El Salvador and Guatemala doesn't hurt Trump. If they won't, okay, all right. It won't hurt it if he doesn't get the wall and he vetoes the bill, and if they're unable to override it and the kids get rounded up and put back on the freight trains, well, we'd probably fly them back first class on Boeing 777s. But nevertheless, they go back to wherever the largest airplane they could land from these countries they came from. You don't think that would hurt Trump. And you don't think signing it would hurt Trump. Very interesting. He can't say that. He can't say these are your... He sent it back to him. Right. Well, the constitutional thing to do was to send it, but he could have just canceled it and said, to heck with it. They're out. They're gone. He didn't do that. He canceled it in 6 months to give them time to deal with it legislatively. And I'm just telling you, they can come up. What if they don't stop at the kids? What if Chuck and Nancy and Mitch and Paul and Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, what if they come up with a full-fledged, comprehensive immigration? I know he better not sign it. He can't sign it. This whole situation here is very fluid. Meanwhile, the debt limit's going to go up. There isn't going to be any action on repealing Obamacare. They are trying to get a push here on tax reform. Trump is trying to get that, and Ivanka to do. Ivanka is working with some of the tax think tank people to try to get this done. And here's Bannon out there saying Gary Cohn should be fired, drawn and quartered, quit, whatever. He says it in 60 Minutes. And then what's his name? Huckabee. What's Huckabee's? No, that's the daughter. What's his first? Having a mental block of his first name. Huckabee, the presidential candidate. Was it Mike Huckabee? He and his daughter went on The View yesterday. Did you know this? Why? Why do our people go on these shows and be insulted? Joy Behar, who's 84 now? Me? No, what she said, Joy Behar looked at Mike Huckabee, and she said, let's not pretend that Trump has said some horrible things about women. Let's not pretend. And, of course, Huckabee nodding and so forth. And the audience of these crazy left-wingers going nuts. And then she says, how can you have your daughter? How can you send your daughter to defend this man? Let's not pretend that he hasn't said horrible things about women. Now, why? And Huckabee had a good answer. He said, look, I don't look at it. This man gave my daughter one of the greatest opportunities. And then Sarah Sanders, she said, hey, look, you know what? He hits everybody hard. He doesn't show any favorites. But she didn't say, you're all wrong. He respects everybody in the White House. He respects me. She didn't say that. She said he hits everybody. Why even go on these shows? Why do you have to go there and be insulted by Joy Behar? What do you expect to get out of this? I don't understand it. Anyway, folks, I do want to get back to the phones because so many of you still have a lot you want to weigh in on. So take a break here. Be back soon. Stay with us. Back to the phones. As indicated, this is Walter in Lexington, South Carolina. Great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Hail to thee, Rush.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that.
Rush, one thing, I'm in Lexington, South Carolina. And apparently this storm is going to do very similarly to Hurricane Hugo back in the 80s and cut a swath through the middle of our state. So we're bracing for that. But the reason I called primarily has to do with my daughter is a lieutenant in the United States Navy.
Oh, yes.
Currently on a mission in undisclosed area where they are kicking some significant butt. But anyway, I am sick and tired of the NFL allowing their venue to be violated with this anti-American venom. And I've just had it with professional football. I'm not going to pay any more attention to it ever again, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sick of the political correctness and all this. I just want to watch a stupid football game. And this sideshow, they're allowing it to happen.
I hear you.
The media can feed on it, and I'm done with it.
I hear you. You just want to watch football. You like football. You want the announcers and the media people to talk about football, the game, the players, the plays, the strategy. You don't want to hear about what some guy making $10 million a year thinks of the flag. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to see the flag.
South Carolina Gamecocks.
Well, when you say this venom, this anti-American venom, what are you specifically referring to?
The people who take a knee during the national anthem and refuse to allow our country to be praised and glorified for the goodness that it represents to the whole world.
I hear you. And I'll tell you something. You're not alone. There was a story, and I don't. Let me see if I can find it. It happened in Cleveland. The Cleveland cops. I know I've got this stack. It's too big for me to go through. I'm going to try to construct this from memory. The Cleveland Browns at a preseason game earlier this year, some of the African-American players refused to stand for the anthem, or they made some gesture. Here it is. They made some gesture that was considered disrespectful, much like Kaepernick taking a knee and all that. The story here from Breitbart. Cleveland police and the EMTs, emergency medical technicians, are boycotting the season opening flag ceremonies after the Browns kneeled during the national anthem. As the Browns prepared to meet the New York Giants on Monday, August 21st, which this is an old story. The story itself is actually 6 days old. Nearly a dozen members of the Browns took a knee during the playing of the national anthem at First Energy Stadium, downtown Cleveland by the lake. That enraged many local fans, including a Cleveland's Veterans of Foreign Wars post, which announced a boycott of Browns games in response to the anthem protest. Jim Brown, famed Browns star, criticized the protest, telling young players, don't disrespect the flag. Don't do that. Be an activist or a player, but don't combine the two. However, the Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association and the ILA Local 1975, which represents the city's dispatchers, EMTs, and paramedics, have announced they will not participate in a flag ceremony the team had planned to perform for the season opener. The union president, Daniel Nemeth, said the union is refusing to participate in the planned ceremony because of the players' protest. Nemeth said, this hit home with me. I'm a veteran. I'm an 8-year veteran with the Marine Corps. So to disrespect the flag by taking a knee is not something I'm going to be part of. Police union President Steve Loomis agreed that the Browns' protest was too much to take. He says, I'm here at a national police convention. As soon as they hear that I'm from Cleveland, the first question, what about those Browns, those stinking Browns? So if the ownership of the Browns and the league are going to allow that kind of stuff to happen and then come to us and say, we want you to help with the flag, that's hypocritical. So they basically are saying, we're not going to participate in the flag ceremony. It's going to be disrespected. We respect the flag, and we're not going to do it. So in Cleveland, there is pushback on this. But as I mentioned earlier, too, there's a column from the Chicago Tribune by a reporter named John Cass, who is convinced that the NFL is over, that they don't know it, and it's not over for the reasons that you think. It's over because the middle class parents are deciding this game's too dangerous. There's too many concussions. They've seen the movie, and they're not letting their kids play football. So the feeder system is being affected. How are you? Half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Rush Limbaugh, America's real anchorman. Susan in Klein, Texas. You're next. Great to have you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Rush. I just called to tell you that you're right about the water, the hurricane. You're right about everything, Rush. We just survived Harvey and Ike before that. We lived here 30 years. And, if you're going to quarter in the market on something, it needs to be peanut butter, jelly, and bread. Because you can, make your own water, as you say. And I pray that this thing takes a right, which they usually do. And I wish you would have told us where you think it's going to hit. But I study it too. And, Harvey was different because it formed in the Gulf very quickly. And they were right on. We didn't lose power, but we had in our, we were 200 miles from where it hit, and we had 32 inches of rain. So I'm kind of concerned that everybody's going to get on the highway, and that's where the water gets you.
Well, they are starting to enforce evacuations here, and they are also beginning to shut down access to the barrier islands at various points tomorrow. So they are going to flood the zone with people who evacuate. I mean, the lines of cars coming out of Key West for the last couple of days have been, and those are 2-lane roads in many cases, sometimes 4.
And they need to evacuate. The problem, and everybody kind of dissed our mayor, who's not my mayor because we live outside, but there's nowhere to go. You need to let the people that need to get out of the way get out of the way. Texas is different than Florida, obviously, but
well, the thing, evacuating to further north in Florida may not be enough if you're going to evacuate here, because this storm, even if it hugs the East Coast going up, the tropical storm force winds are going to reach across to Tampa, in St. Pete. And if it cuts the state in half, it's going to weaken as it goes up, as opposed to half of it staying over water. But there's no real good scenario here. Did you say you wish I would tell you what I think is going to happen?
Yes, sir.
You realize if I do that,
it's not gonna affect your rating, Rush. You're always right.
Oh no, I'm not. But not going to affect my rating. But all it would take. Let's say that I tell you I think it's going to do X, and it doesn't do X. You think the left could go find some actor to say, I believe Rush Limbaugh. I stayed right here because Limbaugh said I had nothing to worry about. And now look, I've lost my home. I've lost my wife. I lost my Xbox. I don't have nothing. All because I listened to Rush Limbaugh. You think they'd have trouble finding somebody? They could write a script. They could hire an actor to go on TV and say that.
Okay, all right. But I told Mr. Snerdley, these are the order of people I trust. I trust the Lord God Almighty, my husband, Rush, and Trump.
Well, look, I appreciate that. And let me tell you, people might be thinking, gee whiz. But here's the thing. I learned this from my dad way back in the early days of this show. I know that you believe me. I want you to. I'm being honest with people here. I want to be believed. And I factor that into everything I say here. I learned long ago not to say things just to get a reaction out of people. I learned long ago, don't say what you don't believe just to make people mad. I haven't done it. I don't do it. I'm not constitutionally capable of doing it. Now, I do have thoughts on the hurricane, but look, at this point, it would not serve any purpose to say so. I could write my comments down and put them in a lockbox, and we'd go back after the hurricane and open the lockbox and read to you what I thought and see if it happened. But here's right now, All that matters is that the Hurricane Center can't move the track, no matter what the models do, because once the Hurricane Center published a mainland hit near Miami and up to West Palm Beach, they can't move that. They're committed to it. It's part of the way they warn. Even if they think that it's going to turn and be offshore east, they can't move that track in advance of that happening because they can't be sure. If they were to move that track offshore east, say tonight at 5 o'clock in 2 hours, and then sometime tomorrow, and it moves, and they're right, but then late Saturday night, it makes a jog left back over land, they would be in deep doo-doo because people believe them too. And they can't afford, now that they've invested and committed to a landfall in South Florida, they have to stick with that until the hurricane makes a move that is off that track. They can't make a move now because of the models. I mean, even if the models show it turning due east and making a beeline for Grand Bahama, they're going to have to wait till the actual hurricane makes that move before they can change their track. So if any of you in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, if you're going to make sure you're at every update, 5 p.m., 11 p.m., 5 a.m., 11 a.m., be advised in the next couple updates or more, it isn't going to change appreciably from what it is now, unless the hurricane itself makes an unexpected jog, either left or right. There are models on either side of this track right now. There's a model that still takes this thing into northern Cuba, dipping down in coming out about Havana, and then straight up the middle of the state of Florida after impacting the Keys. That's the UK Met model. Now, it's way out there on the left or the west. And there's a bunch of other models to the east. So their track is pretty much in the middle of all this, and which, as I say, they're committed to it. So what I think it's going to do, it would not serve any purpose to say at this point. I'll take a break. We'll be back. Don't go away. Before we get out of here, I got the most incredible email today from Coco up at the website. He said, Russian Catherine, this is a submission I plan on using for the featured ditto head in this week's Rush in a Hurry recap email that we send out every Friday afternoon. By the way, you should sign up for that. It's a recap of everything happened in the week. It's an HTML email that is one of the best recaps of any media program there is. Everything of note that happened here, it's in that email. And we include a featured ditto head every week. And this week's is a 9-year-old man, a young boy named Joshua, 9 years old, recovering from a heart transplant in a hospital in Texas. And he listens to this program, 9 years old, every day on the radio. We got a note from his father. And it says, my son wants to give you a shout out, Mr. Limbaugh. He's 9 years old. He just went through a heart transplant at Texas Children's Hospital. He loves listening to your program on the radio. He'll be in the hospital for about a month to recover. He loves our country. He would hope that you would give him a shout out. Thank you, Mr. Limbaugh, and God bless. And here's a picture of him in the hospital. Coco has this. So we are going to be not only the shout out here, but in our Rush in a Hurry email recap. So thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. Stephen and Joshua's the son. This is stuff that just almost stops my heart. I mean, to tell you the truth here, to see these kinds of things. Mark Stein will be here tomorrow. We have to get out, folks. Back to wrap it up in a moment. Mark Stein will be here tomorrow because the authorities are not going to allow business to be conducted here anywhere on the island tomorrow. So, fear not, folks. We will be here on Monday. Well, we won't be here. Well, hopefully we will, actually, but we'll be on the radio Monday. See you then. Thank you.